Welcome back to the Washcast. Another week, another show, same old face. We're going to jump into it right away. Before we do that, though, a couple messages for you. The usual, this show is brought to you by Deliver. Tired of paying a fortune for delivery? Find out how Deliver's customized pricing can put more money back in your business. Link to that is below in the description. Check out our website. Learn more. We offer a great service. What can I say? It's my own business. I'm shamelessly plugging it. Oh, well. The show is also brought to you by Beehive, newsletter platform built for growth. You can get 20% off for 3 months as a Deliver Logistics partner, and you'll get a 30-day free trial that gives you access to everything they do. Fantastic company. I use them myself. Can't stress this enough. Link is below in the description. Check them out. It's great for everything from news publications to just marketing newsletters. Whatever you need it for, Beehive's got you covered. We've also got, they're not an official sponsor, but I do want to shout out Rumble. Download the Rumble mobile app. With that, you get access to the live streaming, the video on demand. You can watch ad-free with Rumble Premium. And if you're a creator, you get access to the Rumble Creator Program. Fantastic program. You can make some money. If streaming's what you do or content creation is what you do, there's no better way to monetize it than getting involved with the Rumble Creator Program. Download the mobile app today. You'll get notifications whenever shows like this one go live. So you can't beat it. Jump on it, guys. And before we jump in, I have one other thing. We are trying to build a community with this show. All right. You guys that are down in the chats every week, I love you to death, right? If you want to build that community with us outside of just the weekly Rumble chats, we now have a Washcast Discord server. We've got everything from a meme channel where everybody just kind of shit posts to our main chat. I've built in a debate space that I would really love to get up and running so that people can express different viewpoints. And keep that free speech really rolling. But on top of that, we're able to build a community, make new friends, do all of it. It's going to be great, honestly. Plus, you get exclusive announcements like all of the next shows get announced on the Discord server first. We're going to be posting all of the clips on Discord first eventually. It's going to be a fantastic venture for us. It's a way to build a better community. It's a way for all of us to stay in touch, share our lives. I can't stress it enough. Link is below in the description. Join the server, stay in touch. Let's have some fun with it. Now we'll get on to the show. My guest this week is another social media influencer and political strategist. You may have seen him on X, on Instagram. He's constantly posting great information. Ladies and gentlemen, Gentry Gevers. Hey, what is going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you? Sorry that I took so long to finally nail down a date.
Oh, you're good, man. It was coming out of the election season into inauguration season, and like it took us both some time. So it's all good, man. It is all good. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I always love doing these podcasts.
Oh yeah, dude, they're a blast. When I started doing this, I realized how much I liked it because originally it was just a way to like use the like 10,000 followers that I have, or almost 10,000 during election season, to kind of keep people in the know. And then I realized, holy shit, I actually really like this. So here I am, like 35 episodes later, and it's been a lot of fun. So for everybody that maybe is not familiar with you, give us a little bit of background, who you are, what you do.
Yeah. Well, my name is Gentry Gevers. I run one of the biggest political news accounts on Instagram, just under my name at Gentry Gevers. And I say one of the biggest. I just hit 116,000 followers today, so I'm not the biggest, but I'm getting up there, and I'm going for that million mark. I started doing that. Well, I started doing social media back in college in like 2011. So I was building and selling Instagram accounts before really
Wow.
anybody knew that you could do that.
Right.
And I guarantee you, some of the accounts that I started are still around today. One of the biggest ones I had was, and if anybody followed, probably not, but if anybody followed this who's listening back in like 2011, 2012, it was dream big, why not? At dream big, why not? And I just posted success quotes, and there was some growth hacks that still worked on old Instagram. So I think I built that one up to like 100,000 followers and then sold it off to a guy. And the really interesting thing that I did was I didn't even know I was doing this, but I was just like DMing and networking with people and getting shout outs and doing shout out for shout out, all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
before it was even really a thing. And then when I sold it to this guy, he was like, holy crap, like I got a deal. You have no idea what you just built. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. So he
So,
was looking years into the future when everything's monetized.
yeah. I was just trying to grow, and I wasn't really trying to build like a strategy around it. And then I started to get into like small business social media because everyone was seeing like everyone was trying to get what I was doing. So had a sales job, always did social media on the side, and then got into like brand management and influencer influencer agency type stuff. And then 2020 happened. I got really pissed off at what was going on uh,
Yep.
with like I thought COVID was stupid. So
Yeah.
I'm from Seattle, and
Ooh. Ooh,
no,
were
no,
you
no.
there during COVID?
Oh yeah. I was in Seattle up until last year. So
Oh
Kirkland,
wow.
Washington is where COVID started in the U.S. Like the first patient ever recorded was in an old folks home in Kirkland, Washington, and I was supposed to go to this like church weekend retreat that was going to be super fun, and then it got canceled because of COVID, and I was like, this is really dumb. Like I'm a healthy guy, like ex college athlete. Like, what are we doing? And then all the
Yep.
news started to come out about it. And I was honestly, I'll just be really honest. I was scared for like 2 weeks. And the reason why is because everyone was saying it was a respiratory disease. And that was back when like Juuls and vapes were like really, really big. And
Yep.
so I was like, every kid who vapes is going to die. Like I
Yeah.
was convinced of that. And then when they didn't, I was like, oh, this is not a big deal at all. Like
Right.
this is like so I I wasn't political, but I was like, this is really dumb. Like my bro frat like rebellion kind of thing just like turned on, and I was
Yeah.
like, this is dumb. Why are we all scared? I was in Seattle, so it was like the heart of it. Like when the vaccine like mandate came out, like we had to like have a vaccine passport to go into restaurants. And okay, um, but the thing that really got me into this like political social media content, because I was already doing social media, and I was in Arizona, and it was like a week after the whole George Floyd thing, and a buddy and I we were just like going and seeing the Grand Canyon and Horseshoe Bend, and all the stuff that Arizona has to offer. It's a great state, and we were driving back to Phoenix from I think Sedona, and we had to take like the long route back to our Airbnb because all the roads were blocked off because like National Guard was there because of all the BLM riots. And then I look online, and it's like happening in Seattle, LA, Phoenix, Chicago, New York, like Miami, like all the big cities. This was
Yep.
happening, and I was like, this is coordinated, obviously. And I hadn't even been
Yep.
like fully like red pilled up until this point. Like I knew Bush did
Yeah.
9/11, and I knew that like the conspiracy theories, like there was a lot of truth to it, but I was
Right.
like, this is obviously coordinated. Like,
It's astroturfed.
yeah, like what are we doing? So I immediately started to look online and actually got super red pilled, I ended up watching like, I don't know, probably like 50, 60 hours worth of like conspiracy documentaries. And I was already prone to it, right? Like I grew up in Seattle, but I grew up Christian, conservative, like
Yeah.
just the opposite of what Seattle was. And so
Yeah.
I was
Pretty much.
like, you know, like I've read Revelations. I know how this all ends. So like, it's
Right.
like, so I end up watching this stuff and I get like radicalized, like to the T. And I'm like, okay, like what do I do with this now? And so the first video, and this is actually interesting. My pastors at the time encouraged me to start posting about politics because they were very political. We had just started they had just started a church. I had started to help grow that, and they were like, just be an influencer, post online about this stuff. And so the
Yeah.
first video that really popped off was um, like I put my camera up like in like on the kitchen sink or something like that. So I like put the camera up like this, and I'm like, I'm a Trump supporter in Seattle. Who's with me? Literally low effort. And this was back when TikTok was fantastic, and you
Yeah.
could just go viral for anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that video popped off. Like I hit the left side of the algorithm, and I got all this hate, and I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? And then I hit the right side of the algorithm and I got all this love. And they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saying this, blah, blah, blah. And so like that was probably like end of August. And so from end of August to November 4th, I think I gained 85,000 followers on TikTok. It was like so quick. Now I will say, it took from like, 2012 up until, 2020 to really gain a large following. And I've since lost that account. So
I was
like,
just about to ask, did the
yeah,
censorship Nazis get you?
I've lost more followers by getting deleted than most people will ever have.
Right.
So like, and I'm not saying that to be like cool or anything. I'm just saying that
Right.
like, and if anyone who's listening has lost an account, they know how demoralizing it is, or if they just like get shut down, how demoralizing it is to actually like get back up there and post. Like, I'll be honest, my ex account sucks. The algorithm hates me. And so I'll post and sometimes I'll get a couple thousand. Most of the time I'll just be in like the, 200 view range, whatever, which sucks because
It's the same way for
and
me.
it's demoralizing. Like I'm friends with a bunch of the guys who have some of the big X accounts, and like I talk to all of them, and they are convinced that they understand the algorithm. I don't think they do. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But what was I saying before I went on this tangent? Yeah,
After you
so
lost your TikTok account.
yeah. So I popped off on TikTok, and then November 4th, I was doing like maybe like 100,000 views a video, and I was posting like 3-4 times a day on TikTok, and so I was like, I was crushing. I was like on my way to be one of the biggest. And then
Those are rookie numbers compared to 3 or 4 times a day. That's rookie numbers compared to what you do now, man. Holy shit.
I know. But then on November 5th, like I got shadow banned to the max. Like I went from, I think I have a screenshot of it if I can go find it, but I was going from like, a couple million views a day to 10,000. So it was insane. So that was really demoralizing. And so I started my Instagram account around this probably 3 or 4 months later after the inauguration, and
Wow.
I
Wow.
started
You
to
just
post.
started
And
that after the inauguration?
no. So
Oh.
my in 2020.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I do know some people who have like 200,000 followers that started around the inauguration. like there's you can still grow like crazy on social media. Anyway, and so it's been like 4 years on an account, really 5 years of consistent posting and um, going to events and flying around the country and trying to meet all these people and doing some cool stuff. So yeah,
It's a grind,
it's
man. People, I don't think people realize how much actually goes into like the actual social media side of it. Like you post a ton. Is it all you posting, or do you have like a team that
no,
sources
it's
it?
all me. It's all me.
Oh wow! So you do this
I
full time now?
yeah, sort of. I consult and stuff and do some stuff on the side. I also monetize my social media differently than other people. So, like, I'm helping my friends in private equity find deals. I'm helping build some sales teams with it. So,
Yeah,
I'm not doing the traditional stuff. So, and
right.
like I'll
So
do affiliates and stuff like that. But yeah,
when you lost your TikTok account, were they monetizing at that point?
no, they weren't.
I was
So
gonna
I was
say
doing
that
like
that would be even
affiliate.
worse.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing affiliate deals. I was probably making, gosh, I was probably making like a couple thousand a month. So it didn't suck, but it wasn't
Right,
like I lost a whole career of stuff. I was on my way to be
right.
able to like, do all these cool things. But I think the biggest value that I've ever gotten out of social media isn't necessarily the views. It's all the relationships that I've been able to build. And
Yep.
I've uh I've thought about doing this and like creating like an ebook or a master class on how to network with social media
Yeah.
as a content creator because the relationships that I have are it's almost more valuable than the the following that I have. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
chicken and the egg type thing, but like
Yeah.
I've been able to get into some rooms that I don't know how I'm able to get into, and it's really only because I have like, and I think it's so weird. Okay, so here's my thing. I think it's so weird that people like look up to people that have a lot of following. Uh, I really
A
do,
little bit.
and
Yeah.
here's why. It's because I sit on my couch and I scroll and I post and I figured out some things and to be able to go viral. Um, and like that's what people are looking up to is like me like bad posture, sitting on my couch. Like
Yeah. Yep.
I
It's
don't
amazing the way
understand it.
society's gone. Like,
Well, I mean, I'll take it, but I feel like if people actually knew what they were, you know, like who they were looking up to in a lot of ways. And I don't think it's necessarily a
right.
bad thing, but like I mean, don't
It's
unless
weird.
you're like unless you're like
It's
a Don Jr. like or Tucker Carlson or Charlie Kirk or whatever. Like, don't.
Bongino. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's so weird what attention can get you, and I feel like
Yeah.
really the only reason why people are famous is because like a lot of people know your name. That's it.
Yeah.
That's really it. I mean, and there's for sure power and prestige in that. But if you boil it
Yeah.
down, like why do people know celebrities? Because they're on the screen and people know their name.
Right.
Media is such a weird business.
It is, and especially since everything's kind of transitioned to that age of social media where it's like,
Hmm.
people aren't necessarily seeing you all the time, but they're seeing your name pop up and they're seeing those posts. And it's like where people used to spend all their time watching, whether it was cable TV or it was, YouTube, like that's how
Hmm.
people knew you. And now
Hmm.
it's from scrolling. And
Hmm.
it's kind of this weird, there's a very weird dichotomy to it where
Hmm.
now you're out and you're getting recognized in public. I'm
Well, I'm
sure.
not. That's
Really?
that's that's the best thing. So I'll tell you this story. Amfest, I was hanging out with DC Drano and Typical Liberal, and they run similar accounts to what I run,
Yeah.
and like obviously Drano got pulled aside and stuff like that, and people wanted to take pictures, but like no one knew who Typical Liberal was. And there was a lot of
Right.
people who passed Rogan and had no idea who he was. And so I actually like building my
Oh,
account like this because like I'm not taking videos of my face. I used to do that. I've gotten,
yeah.
tons of views in the past, just posting my face and my thoughts and all that kind of stuff. But I like this way better because I can have a ton of impact, but not
Yeah.
actually be famous. And
Yeah.
because I don't like, I want to, obviously I want to hit, 1 million followers, 10 million followers and continue this red wave that we have going on, especially with the younger
Yeah.
generation. But I also want to have like a normal life. Like I just got
Right.
engaged a couple weeks ago, and we're getting married soon. And like I don't,
Congrats, man.
thank you. I don't want to like pigeonhole myself into this like thing of fame. So
Right.
like I think
Right.
views are awesome, but fame is like a totally different story. So I'm almost running like a faceless account in a way, but it has
Yeah.
my face on. I don't know. It's I've thought about this a lot because everyone's like, Gentry, you gotta post your face. You gotta show your takes. And I'm like, I really like what I'm doing, and it's kind of working really well. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is. And I think a lot of it is because of the fact that people they tend to learn in like I've always said sound bites and synopses. And
Hmm.
so when they see one of your posts come by that's just a screenshot of one of your tweets, like
Hmm.
otherwise they're not going to see that unless they're on X. But they're
Hmm.
still getting that like little 140 character dose in news.
Hmm.
And that's how people consume media and how they consume news. And I think that's something that our side of the aisle has really done a good job of, especially in the last 4 years,
Hmm.
of figuring out how that works. And so that's where you see a lot of like the Gen Z coming into the fold, is because we're actually giving them the media they consume. The
Hmm.
left is still
Hmm.
going on cable news, and they're doing like cringe posting, and it's like, okay, I'm sure that works for a segment of the population, but for people that want to stay informed, which, let's be completely honest, where the left is over credentialed, the folks
Hmm.
on the right, especially the younger ones, are where the actual intellect is. They understand the game,
That's
so
actually
it's
really
worked well.
that's a really good distinction because like kind of like what I was saying earlier, like I sit on my couch a lot and I post, and I'd
Right.
like to think that I'm an intelligent person, but I'm not credentialed, right? And the left is like that's all they
Right.
care about is like, oh, you have this PhD from Harvard, like let's put you on TV. And now a lot of people are waking up to the fact that Harvard is like a woke you know
Yeah.
terrorist organization in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Well, they tell them like, oh yeah, I have a PhD from Harvard, and they don't realize that PhD's in gender studies. Like,
Right, right,
like
right. It's like,
they leave out those details. Yeah.
yeah, I got a PhD in underwater basket weaving. I can hold my breath for 17 minutes.
Right. Right. And then people on the right are kind of like, not to take one of Luigi Mangioni's tweets, but I think it was one of the funniest things I've seen is somebody asked about having a PhD, and he's like, yeah, I have a PhD, pretty huge dick. Like, that's the kind of stuff that people kind of latch onto. Like, it's that quick flash. And we've done a really good job of like keeping the humorous side of it and not being afraid to push the boundaries with some of the shit we say. And I think that's another reason the younger generation has kind of gravitated to this side, is because look at the younger Gen Z folks. Like, they've spent the majority of their life having to worry about what they say to people, when they say it, how they say it, and how it's perceived. So no wonder there's such an anxiety riddled group of kids. And now they started to see like, okay, this side of things is not censoring my speech. So they gravitate towards that, and the more that they start seeing the reality of the situation, which is what the right tends to live in, at least most of them, they started to kind of, it clicked. They're like, oh, this actually makes some sense.
Hmm.
And so I think this is just the start, and where guys like you that are keeping people informed but not necessarily giving your opinions. Like some of your captions and stuff have your opinions in them or whatever, but for the most part, you're just keeping people informed. And that keeping that kind of pressure on is going to make more of the younger generation, the next generation of voters, come into the fold. I mean, Gen Z is
Well,
the most conservative generation in how long?
I think 50 years. I
Yeah.
will say though that the type of content, the type of news that I do cover definitely has a bias,
Oh yeah.
right? So the bias is there, the opinion is there. I'm not a partisan. I'm very or I'm not bipartisan, very partisan, very very right, very conservative. But I do like letting people read in between the lines. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll go through the comments and my, my comment section is one of the best on the internet. I'm convinced these people are unhinged sometimes.
Oh god. Yeah.
Um, and some of the opinions I'm like, yeah, I actually agree with that. You said it in one of the craziest ways that you could have said it. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I will say to like zoom out to like the larger influencer uh, influencer like um,
Sphere.
ecosystem. I will say I think that I don't think anyone can really doubt this, but I think the last election was influencer driven. And it's because it was almost this like perfect storm. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that, I don't like that Joe Biden was president, but I like how bad he was. My,
Yeah.
my political, my political like strategist mind is like, thank God he was so bad,
Yeah.
because it woke people up to how horrible the radical left's agenda was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and more people started to get their news online, and there was a whole bunch of really really brave people who didn't care if they got canceled. They were like,
Yep.
this is right, this is truth,
Yeah.
and they just started posting. And so like the whole conservative MAGA influencer army, I think, deserves a lot of credit for
Yeah.
helping push Trump over the finish line. I track this kind of stuff, and so if you were to like track it on a graph, I would say April May is really when about 80% of the MAGA influencer army was like in lockstep, and we
Yeah.
didn't stop posting or putting down the pressure
Yeah.
until November 5th. And
Yeah.
really, we were even posting like well until midnight, but there was about 80% of us that were like in lockstep. And it was really cool to see, because someone would
Yeah.
grab onto a framing of a narrative, and then everyone would hop on because we're like, oh, this is actually really good. And then
Yeah.
there would be a whole bunch of group texts and a whole bunch of these
Yeah.
things like how do we do this, how do we do that, and it wasn't necessarily like super organized, but everyone
Right.
kind of understood that the mission was to get Trump elected.
Yeah.
And that's where like the grassroots aspect of the right really like took off. And
Yeah.
so like the left has a really really good ground game of get out the vote. The right's building that, with Turning Point Action
Yeah.
and Scott Pressler and a whole
Yeah.
bunch of these other groups that are, deserve a whole bunch of credit.
Yeah.
Um, but it was really fun. It was really fun last year. Like
It was.
like, we were pulling a lot of views,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting. So I'm kind of a I'm kind of a little bit of a nerd. I haven't talked about this a lot publicly, but I read the comments, and I read comments on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on everything. And I knew in June that Trump was going to win.
Oh
I
yeah.
was I was like cautiously optimistic, and then every time I'd go back and read some more and read some more and read some more, I would be like confirmed. And
Yeah.
so
And then July
And
13th happened, and it was like, oh, yep,
oh,
it's over.
it was
It's
like I was
done.
like, oh yeah, like we're winning for sure.
Yeah.
But the polling didn't necessarily reflect that all that much because there was so many bad polls that were out there, and people were trying to figure out the truth and all this. Like the Iowa poll, but like Ann Seltzer was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Kamala's going to win Iowa by 5 points, and we're like, what are we talking about?
No.
And then
No,
it
this
went the
election, it
opposite
really
way.
exposed it. They
Yeah.
exposed the fraud in the polls. Like, the only one that was accurate was Polymarket. And that was actually legitimately crowdsourced. People were betting money and betting crypto on the election. Like, that was the
Hmm.
best way to gauge which way the election was going.
Hmm.
And the mainstream polls, the ones that are backed by the colleges and the media, and like, you started to realize, holy shit, this entire thing top to bottom is astroturfed. And it's the reason I think the influencer sphere on the left didn't work, is because look at the DNC. They send out emails with talking points, and like, they're offering massive amounts of money for however many posts. Meanwhile, the right was doing that exact same thing, but they were doing it organically. They
Hmm.
weren't doing it for the money. They were like, okay, how do we get this thing across the finish line? How do we make
Well,
sure that 2020 never happens again?
because we were so tired of being just crapped on. Like we were seeing, like we were watching the whole clip, and I love this kind of like framing. It's like we were watching the whole Trump clip, and then CNN would post this, right? And we're like, yeah, but did you watch this part? Did you watch the whole clip? And
Yeah.
no one did that, and so we were like, and that's why stuff was able to go viral. And I
Yeah.
think Brandon Strock actually did a really good job of this with his walk away movement because he kind of like paved the way of like, did you watch the whole clip? And
Yeah.
so because that framing got out there, whenever we would post the whole clip and say, this is the whole clip, this is what CNN is saying, it was honestly so like you just had to be brave enough to go do it. It wasn't hard, but you have to be
No.
brave enough to go do it.
Right. Well, prime example of that was the whole bloodbath thing. Like,
Mhm.
that was,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that was the wake up moment for a lot of people when it came to like the way the media frames everything. And
Hmm.
and I think you made a good point about Brandon. One of the reason I think he was so influential is not just because he was there challenging the narrative, but the whole premise of the walk away campaign was like former Democrats that
Hmm.
had enough and moved over to the
Hmm.
right. And so having that sense of community, in a sense, because that's what social media is, it's all a community. Seeing
Hmm.
people that were like, that had the balls to stand up and go, you know what, yeah, I used to be a Democrat, and none of this aligns with my views anymore. It shakes that worldview of, well,
Hmm.
okay, does this actually align with my views? Do I really want men beating the shit out of women in women's sports? Do I really support this idea of mutilating children? Wait a minute, no, you know what, come to think of it, I don't. And they start to realize that, like, okay, that moral high ground, the moral superiority thing,
Hmm.
that's the whole reason they were doing it. They were doing it because they either had to stay in lockstep, or
Hmm.
they were shoved out of the group. They were shunned like an Amish community.
Totally. Well,
It's just been wild to see.
I saw this. I saw this tweet. I forget who posted it because I always want to try to give credit, but it was the gist of it was in 100 years, people are going to look back at the Democratic Party of now, and they're going to scratch their head wondering why their whole platform was about killing babies in the womb and letting men compete against women in women's sports because
Yeah.
that's honestly all they have. Well, now they're even having what's that name, like Van Holen. He's going to freaking El Salvador to try to talk to some Maryland dad who like it's so it's laughable. It's a
Yeah.
Babylon B article. It's a Family Guy episode. It's South Park in real life. It is
Most
like
of what the left does is.
it's like they're watching this kind of stuff. They're watching South Park and getting ideas, and it's like, hey, this might work. Let me, as a congressman or senator of Maryland, advocate for an illegal alien that's a murderer.
Yeah.
Like, who in their right mind is gonna? And I think that, okay. So here's my political strategist coming out again. I hope they keep doing it. I hope the left keeps doing
I do
this
too.
because,
Yeah,
like,
they'll never win.
it's horrible that this stuff is happening, but they have to go farther and farther and farther left, and it's going to push more people towards the right, and not necessarily that
Yeah.
they're going to become conservative, but
Right.
the left, the radical left, the leftists, whatever you want to call them, is going to be pushing these agenda items that no
Yeah.
one cares about,
Yeah.
right? What a majority, now there's like some fringe people in these blue states, or to be honest, blue cities,
Yeah.
because I don't think there's blue states. I think there's really just blue cities.
That's
But
that's
that
it. That's how it is. Pennsylvania is a prime example up until this election
mhm,
where I make the joke that Pennsylvania is literally Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Alabama in between.
mhm,
And both of those major cities are predominantly blue.
mhm,
We flipped a lot of the smaller cities, quote unquote, this year, and that's what really pushed us over the finish line.
mhm.
But yeah, there's no such thing as a blue state. I think you're right. It's all blue cities.
Yeah, I so there's this like graph that goes around social media sometimes, and it's like a Hunger Games type thing, and it's like which district would win. And I think it's so
Yeah.
funny that, like, obviously, the South is going to do really, really well. But I think it's really interesting that people write off the West Coast just because
Hmm.
of LA, San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle. Because
Yeah.
I grew up in, like, the county where Seattle is. There are some of the most badass people you've ever met. They have more guns than,
Yep.
like, then they know what to do with. They have like hunting land and survival skills and all this kind of stuff. And so
Yep.
I think a better way to frame that would be like, okay, which state would take over their blue cities the quickest? Because that's really what it boils down to. Like, do you
Yeah.
think some furry in Seattle is going to be able to have the survival skills?
No.
No, not even close.
No.
And there was even a thing where um, I saw this stat. You'll have to fact check me on this because I don't necessarily know that it's true, but it makes sense that there's more Republicans in California than any other state, just because there's more
Yeah.
people.
Well, absolutely. And if you look at the electoral map of California, there's a lot of red in that, but it's San Francisco, it's LA, it's the majority of the cities are the ones
Hmm.
that shift blue. And
Hmm.
I think that's, from my perspective, it feels like a hive mind situation where I think the only reason the left has been able to take over cities is because it's high density.
Hmm.
It's easier to push ideas to a mass amount of people in a metro area than it is to bring in the rural folks, or even in a lot of cases the suburbs.
Hmm.
Like it's harder to be able to push that narrative out because you're limited.
Hmm.
So, and that's where I think, Democrats for the longest time were very, very good. Their ground game was fantastic. They were good organizers. They were great at getting the word out. Plus the money funneling in. I mean, it was kind of a no brainer. But they really slacked this election. They had. I mean, I can tell you just from personal experience because I was one of the guys that was out there with Scott Pressler doing these events and door knocking, and
Oh, good.
for every Democrat group that was out knocking doors, there were 4 Republican groups in that same area that were doing the exact same thing. They had no ground game this year, and I don't know if that's kind of shows. Well, now it's kind of been validated when you look at the approval ratings for the Democratic Party.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
people are not enthused by it by any means, and so back to one of your points where they're going against the majority of what people support. If you look back in like 2022, even, it was like 34% of Americans supported deportation. And you move into 2024, and it was up to 56%. So more than half of the population supports mass deportations, and yet Democrats are out in the streets advocating for murderers, rapists, gang members to stay here. And I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at this going, what the fuck? Why do we can't take care of our own people? Why do you want to bring these violent criminals in that are just going to make that harder? Like it doesn't make any sense. But from a strategy point of view, I maybe you can shed better light on this than me. I think the Trump cabinet is making one big misstep right now. And I think it's that while we're tackling this whole Maryland man situation, the whole sending him to El Salvador thing, they seem to have been capitalizing on that and advocating for this idea of violent criminals that are U.S. citizens being able to be sent to places like Secot in El Salvador to serve out their prison sentences. And I think that is something that the majority of Americans are against. I don't think anybody wants to see a U.S. citizen deported to a foreign country to serve a prison sentence. I think overall, I don't know that that's something that's going to gain a lot of support. And I don't know that them trying to tackle this right now in the midst of all of this is a very a good idea in terms of maintaining some of the more centrist or slightly right leaning base.
Yeah, I can see where you would have issues with like the timing of it.
Right.
I tend to agree. I think potentially it's more of a framing of the issue, and here's why. I know this for a fact. You can actually go watch a documentary called Seattle is Dying. It was from 2018, 2019. And so the problem has actually been exasperated even more. But there are violent criminals that will commit murder, assault, arson, and they will get arrested, go to jail, and be back out sometimes the next day. And it's because they're homeless, they're down, they don't have a good situation, right? They're drug addicted, they're this, they're that. And so to be honest, there's one of two options that can be employed. Number one, we send them away because they are like making our cities, which used to be great, by the way. Seattle was a great city in like
Yeah.
2014, 2015, 2016. Right, it was in decline, but it wasn't like it is today with the
No, and
lawlessness.
even before that, there's a reason that people gravitated towards those cities
I
because
mean,
there
we,
was
we
something
have
special about them.
yeah, we have some of the craziest businesses that have come out like in the whole US. We have
Yeah.
Microsoft, we have Boeing, we have Amazon, Costco's up there, Starbucks is up there,
Yeah.
Expedia is up there. And there's a like we have like $2 trillion businesses that are headquartered up in like there's and I'm just taking Seattle as an example, right? You can apply this
Right.
to any city, right? Because
Yeah.
it's essentially the same thing. But you can get rid of the criminals because there's a whole bunch of people. Seattle is or Washington, more people are moving out of Washington, and it's kind of rivaling California for people moving out. They're moving to
Yeah.
Idaho, they're moving to Arizona, to Dallas, they're moving, to Florida.
Yeah.
They're moving all over the country. So, um, but you have an option to like put these people in prison, right? Actually have them pay for their crimes,
Right.
or you can, and so that means either prison in the States or prison somewhere else. I think El Salvador
Right.
really could have a incredible market of being the prison of the world. And it would make crime go down like crazy because you have this threat of going to, what's it called? ECOT or whatever.
Secot. Yeah.
Secot. Yeah. It's like if there's a possibility you can go to Secot, I don't think you're committing as many crimes. I
Right.
don't. I think you're trying to figure it out. I think you're trying to like you know change who you are. So
Right.
there's that option. The second option is there's a couple really good nonprofits and ministries that actually are having some really good results on people getting rehabbed out of these
Yeah.
drug addictions. And now we're only talking about like American citizens who are homeless, drug addicted, the whole nine yards. We're not talking about illegals. I think
Right.
illegals need to get out.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but there's one in San Francisco that, and I'm blanking on the name, but they have a really good track record of taking in homeless people who are just out of their minds, drug
Yeah.
addicted, whatever, and then transforming them into a beneficial member of society.
Yeah.
They use like a faith-based approach, and so people are like the transformations that they have on their website are like insane. And so
Yeah.
like if I were in charge of whatever department that had that jurisdiction, I would call them up and say, let's do this in every city. There's also
Yeah.
some methadone clinics in the Northeast in Maine that are doing some really cool things with getting people weaned off of drugs. I think that
Yeah.
there's even Joe Rogan talks about this all the time, and I've looked into it a little bit. Ibogaine, it's not
Yeah.
legal in the states,
Right.
but it's had an incredible effect on people with PTSD and getting people off of
Massive.
drugs and like just changing up the brain chemistry enough so they can be like
Yeah.
sustainable members of society. So there's definitely things that we can do to fix this stuff for very cheap. Um, I mean, like how much do private prisons cost us in the US versus that actually would be an interesting thing. Someone should ask Grok and tweet this out. Maybe I'll do this after this episode. But
Yeah.
what it costs to run private prisons in the US and then what it costs to have someone go to ESCOT, ECOT, El
Yeah.
Salvador, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Well, and this, I guess another way to look at this too, that it just kind of hit me is Trump has a very unique way, and his administration has a very unique way of kind of forcing people's hand without actually forcing people's hand. So this could potentially be a moment to capitalize on this idea of sending people that are U.S. citizens out of the country. You could flip that on its head and say, okay, well, this is one way to do it, or the other way to do it is to actually reform the fucking prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, a lot of the nonprofits that are taking a faith-based approach to it. I just had a conversation with my buddy Chris. He hosts a show called Live with Chris's World, and we just had this conversation about it where if you don't actually try to rehab people, if you're just putting them in prison for 10 years and then sending them back out into the same environment they were in previously, that's why you wind up with repeat offenders, because you're not
Mm-hmm.
actually tackling the root cause of the problem. Same thing with a lot of these blue cities where they'll lock people up for a couple weeks, couple months, and then they throw them right back out onto the streets. There's no actual way of fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so there may be a way to spin this narrative of sending people out of the country to say, hey, you know what, it's that, or fix your fucking prison system, fix your fucking districts, and make these judges actually impose fitting sentences.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's another like practical example of some people think that this doesn't affect them, but it absolutely does. Because if you're living in a city that has above average crime, which is most cities, your insurance premiums are going to go up because they look at the crime statistics. They look at car break-ins. They look at murders. They look at this. They look at that. Your insurance premium,
California.
it's costing people money that they're,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like that's like maybe a dumb example to some people, but if you're, I mean, people don't really like insurance companies anyway, right? There's a whole
Right.
thing. I think insurance is in a lot of ways a scam,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I'm not advocating for anyone to get shot. By the way,
Yeah,
I just
no,
think that there probably is a better way. I don't think that we should have to like have to get insurance, like, um, because that means basically just means it's a government, it's an NGO at that point.
that's a libertarian perspective, sir.
It is. It
it's
definitely
it's that
is.
personal responsibility side of things. No,
Um,
you made a really good point though. Is like people think, oh well, this doesn't affect me. Well, California is a prime example. A
mhm,
lot of the big insurance companies, Allstate and a couple others, left. But outside of it, and I think this is what a lot of people miss, is outside of just the cities, those moves don't just affect the cities. When a lot of these massive insurance companies pulled out of California, I saw it on the business side where companies started pulling out, and that created a ripple effect through the entire insurance industry across the board. When companies moved out of California, my insurance rates went up here in Pennsylvania. Like it's not just localized. And so
yeah,
people have to kind of zoom out and look at that and realize, okay, this is a symptom of a much larger issue.
right.
And I think people finally, as the economy got a little bit worse under Biden, again, that's where you were right in saying, like, I think he was the worst president and it was the best thing that could have happened to us in a sense. People
Hmm.
started to kind of realize that, holy shit, wait a minute, this weird fringe sect of the population in major cities is screwing all of us in a
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm.
And so I'm with you. I hope the left continues to do that exact same thing over and over and over again because they're just going to lose every single time.
Their approval rating I saw was at like 20% right now,
Yeah.
and and that was before Van Hollen doubled down and went to El Salvador.
Right.
So I'm
I'd like to
hoping they.
see I'd like to see him get locked up over that too because it is 100% illegal for a governor of a state or a head of a state to actually go and try to advocate foreign policy on behalf of the United States.
Well,
It's illegal.
he's a senator, so he's not.
Yeah.
He's on the national stage.
Right, but
Is that still illegal?
yeah, it's still illegal because he's an individual senator. He's only at the state level. So, unless it's actually illegal for any member of Congress that is not on a State Department committee or that is directly involved with foreign policy to go and try to advocate on the country's behalf. So, I would really love for him the second he steps off that plane to get slapped in handcuffs and see you later. Like, I'm
Hmm.
just saying, we have an administration that has the balls to do it. Just fucking do it. Send a message to the rest of these radical left idiots that think
Hmm.
that while they're screaming that, oh, Trump is violating the law, he's ignoring court orders. Well, so are you.
Yeah,
So are you.
I my like rebel anarchist side is like, let's do it. My PR side is like, this is horrible. Like,
Yeah.
it would be so bad if we arrested him for doing that. I think we should just crucify him in the media and like have the story run so he doesn't get reelected. I mean, Maryland's got to be pissed, and so I think fines probably would be a good idea for him and his campaign. Um, but like the
Or
and
just
maybe
oust him from Congress. We have a majority in the Senate. Just put it to a vote.
yeah,
Kick his ass out.
um, yeah. And maybe I'm not reading the sentiment right, um, but I think that because like whatever the right does, the left has framing for it already. They're marketing geniuses, and
Oh, they're the
so
ultimate gaslighters.
yes, they're the ultimate clickbaiters. So like my strategic mind is like, well, let's just crucify him more. Let's just talk about how bad of a person this Garcia guy is, who has MS-13 tattoos on his on his wrists or on
Yeah.
his hands, and just keep posting that picture and keep posting Rachel Morin and
Yeah.
her story and all this kind of stuff, because the court of public opinion is sometimes greater, and we found this out in this last election. The court of public opinion is stronger than the court of law.
Oh, yeah, in a lot of
And
ways.
it's because Trump, obviously lawfare, all the all the stuff against him was total BS. But people saw through it and they're like, this is BS. I don't think he did any of this stuff. So,
well, and that's something where I'm trying to find it right now. There it is. So the DOJ released and I think this was brilliant timing on their part, because at the height of everybody saying, "Oh, well, this guy wasn't an MS-13 gang member." Well, here is, a report from the Department of Homeland Security that gives, the gang validation per Prince George's County Police Gang Unit, which my aunt actually lives in this county. And so she's very familiar with that police department, but they're validating that he was a member of MS-13. There's intelligence information. They have continuously posted proof, and so I mean, the side that is apparently so protective of the state and the system, and they advocate that our justice system works. Like, here's what your justice system is saying. Or are you now saying that just because Trump's president that the entire system is broken? Like, how it's perfect timing. So I think we need to keep the pressure on and continue to show people this. I mean, there's two different, I believe that's two different. Yeah, two different, like there's a record of deportable or excludable alien encounter or arrest 2019. They came across this guy. Like, there's no lie here. This guy was very clearly a gang member.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to go. And keeping that pressure on and showing people that, like, hey, they're lying to you again, I think is only going to push support in our direction. So you're seeing the left kind of go out and advocate for these people. And I think a lot of folks are like, okay, yeah, well, that's whatever. It's one guy, right? Well, no, this is the entire party's messaging. Mm-hmm. So zoom out and look at it. Do you actually support these things? Probably not. And so guys like you have a lot of value there.
The other thing is, one of the left's messages right now, and you're going to see Harry Sisson post about this 10 times today. But he's like, Trump is going against the Constitution. He's going against the Supreme Court. And it's like, the Supreme Court's ruling was like, hey, probably shouldn't have done that. Try to get him back. But
if El Salvador says no, oops.
El Salvador says no, so like, sorry. But then also, like, what the left is trying to do is to get that person back to the U.S. And what's going to happen when he gets back to the U.S.? I posted a really good clip of Stephen Miller on my Instagram. So if you scroll back a little bit, you can see it. But he's like a masterclass on this stuff. It's like, what happens if he goes back to the U.S.? We're going to deport him somewhere else. So are you saying that you'd be happy with if we deported him to, Egypt or Russia or this country or that country? Like, He can't stay in the U.S.
Yeah, the Trump administration's already said it. They're going to deport him the second he comes back.
Yeah. So, and then there's this thing about like the hairdresser guy where he's like trying to like they're going after these like one-off cases, and it's like the dude's illegal. So and he
committed a crime already.
Members, so he was covering for them. Has no interest in protecting the United States or protecting its citizens or our communities, right? He's just like, but the left is like, oh, we have to save him. We have to. I was like, our cities are in shambles right now. And our cities used to be great. One of the big things that I hate so much is people will like crucify California for the politics, and they'll write it all off. There's a lot of bad things to say about the politics of California, but
Yeah.
California is by far one of the prettiest states in the entire country, hands down, bar none. It
And
is
it's
it
a
is
massive part of our infrastructure.
it is
The
so awesome. We have ports, we have, which bring in a whole bunch of product. We have beaches. The weather is unbelievable there. It
yeah.
is it is the one of the best places in the entire world to live.
Yeah.
And it used to be unbelievable.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh, California's garbage. California's garbage." I go to California probably a couple times a year. I love San Diego. I love Orange County. I'm trying to stay out of LA, but like we have some good. I have some really good friends in San Diego. We have some family friends up in Santa Barbara, and like those places are awesome. Cost of living's really high. I would never live there right now, but I don't think we should write off California at
No.
all. Like
No, I think it should
it's
be a
such a
goal.
fantastic state. There's also so many fantastic patriots there, people who are just like staunch conservatives. Um,
Yep.
and you'll appreciate this too, being in Pennsylvania, but people in blue states, conservatives in blue states, actually have to be really resilient. I moved from
Yeah.
Seattle to North Carolina to Charlotte a year ago, and I think like it's a purple city for sure. The rest of North Carolina is pretty red, right? It's got a whole bunch of
Yeah.
people like the good old boys, right?
Yeah.
I love it here. I think this place is fantastic, but it's really funny to me when people say like, "Oh, like North Carolina is getting too liberal and it's lost its way." I'm like, you guys have no idea how good you have it. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
like like
Yeah.
we're never going to reach this like conservative utopia, and I think that's
No.
probably a good thing to realize. We will
Yeah.
reach a strong conservative majority, especially with these young kids being way more conservative, these young guys being way more conservative. But like the other day at church, someone was complaining about how liberal Charlotte was getting, and I was like, it's not that liberal, guys. Like, trust me.
No.
Do you want me to tell you about the opposite? Let me tell you about Seattle, because in Seattle you'll see trans people everywhere. They are out and about. They're walking around. It is not uncommon to see a furry walking around in downtown Seattle, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I've seen 5 or 6. And
That's
I like when I lived in, because I don't live in Seattle proper. I live about a half. I grew up about a half hour outside, so I wouldn't go to Seattle often. But
right.
whenever I did, I saw the craziest people, and it's
Yeah.
exactly what you would think. In Charlotte and in other cities like Charlotte, all of the all of the like super liberal people um, are in coffee shops. Like
Yeah. They kind of
if
mind
I
their own business.
Well, no, but here's where I kind of like differ from everyone else in the conservative party, where they just want to get rid of all these people. No, I think that they're really good at like the arts, and
Yeah.
I think that like arts and food, and like I don't want to get coffee from a Republican. I want to get coffee from someone who like that like I if I don't know your gender and I'm ordering from you, I know that coffee is going to be fire. It's going to be so good.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's what I know.
Yeah.
So like there's a place for these like whack job people. It's not as teachers, but like if my chef is super liberal, I'm like, you're gonna make the best food of all time. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Well, so on the arts side of things, I think that they used to be very good with the arts. It's
used to
become
is good called out.
it's become very, very lazy. Like there's a studio, it's called Angel Studios. They're a
Mm-hmm.
very, very Christian, they're a faith-based studio, very conservative, and they just put out a movie called Homestead, and
Mm-hmm.
it was absolutely fantastic. And we're starting to see more of that conservative conservative art. Like one
Mhm.
of my favorite movies, it's made my all-time favorites list, was I don't know if you've seen Nefarious,
Mhm.
but fantastic movie. And
Mhm.
there was not a single liberal on that project.
Yeah.
Like they've kind of lost their way because they've, and I think it's a part of the larger political messaging where they've started to inject their politics into everything.
Well,
And
very, very overtly too, because they've
yeah,
always done this, right? There's always been ties to the CIA and the government to Hollywood, right? Like if you watch
right,
the documentary Out of Shadows, you can it's all laid out in that documentary perfectly.
right,
But you're right; it's gotten very overt. Like they're not shying away from any of the weird like political stuff. All the gay movies used to be like fringe, and
yeah,
they used to have this like cult following, and somehow it made it to the main stage, and they're
yep,
forgetting that there's a whole bunch of people in these flyover states that really want to see like cowboy.
yeah,
That's what they want. And here's one thing I've noticed. Um, Yellowstone, one of my favorite series of all time. Taylor
yeah,
Sheridan is I if I ever meet that guy, I'm gonna shake his hand because he has given me like hours and hours and hours of entertainment, and I
yeah,
just love it. But I have noticed that there's been a shift in what Netflix is putting out. They're trying to put out a whole bunch of cowboy stuff, and I'm like,
yep,
it's not going to be as good as Yellowstone, so I'm probably not going to watch it. But
right,
they're getting better.
yeah,
Netflix is. Disney isn't. And the Snow
no,
White is like a classic example of that. They're
yeah,
still they still well. So here's something in we're not necessarily going to see a lot of good stuff coming out of Hollywood until like probably 2030 because the pipeline of movies it takes about 2 years. So all the woke
yeah,
stuff that you saw come out in 2020 and 2021 that was planned in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 and it takes a long time to like right that ship. But
yeah.
guys like Taylor Sheridan and Angel Studios and everyone involved in that kind of stuff, it's they saw the trend in because I think Sound of Freedom, it had been finished since
That was
like
an Angel
20
Studios project,
well, sort of. So the whole
crowdfunded by
story,
them anyway.
well, again, sort of. The whole story with that one is they finished the movie. I think they started shooting it in 2012, and then Disney bought it and they shelved it. And then
Could
Angel
you
Studios
imagine
came
how bad
along,
that would have been?
dude. I mean, if yeah, because I mean, that movie ended up making a tremendous amount of money for Angel Studios. Now they have the money to go fund all these other projects, which is awesome. Um, but uh, there's been filmmakers that are trying to actually make good movies because I don't know if you've seen like a lot of the movies with good messages that have come out in the last 20 years have sucked. It's so nice to have movies or
Yeah,
studios like Angel Studios coming out and saying like we can have good art
yeah,
and we can take some of the art that the left used to be good at and bring it over to our side
yeah,
and actually service people who are in the flyover states instead of making a movie for all the ambiguous people in Hollywood because
yeah.
that's what they've been doing.
Well, and look specifically on like the horror movie side of things. If you look at mainstream horror movies now, they suck. Like I went back and just watched it was two movies, The Collector and The Collection, that were put out. One was in 2009 and I think the other one was in like 2012.
Hmm.
And like they were some of the grittiest, most boundary pushing mainstream horror movies out there.
Hmm.
And now it's not there, it's nowhere near what these studios are pushing out now. Perfect example of that is Damien Leone has put out the Terrifier movies, and they're entirely independent. They're some of the most over the top, gory, like just what people would call torture porn, like because they're so gritty and violent, and it's all practical effects. There's no CGI, so like these guys are going through like oil drums of blood filming these movies. But it was one of the most popular horror movies in the last decade. And they've put out 3 of them now, and they're getting ready to put out a 4th one. And literally from Terrifier 1 to Terrifier 2, they crowdsourced it. They literally crowdfunded the entire project, and they doubled their budget. And then the 3rd one, they managed to get some financial backing,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost doubled the budget again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like there's a real want for stuff that is not Hollywood based. It's apolitical. It's and a lot of it, like with Angel Studios, for example, a lot of it's faith based. And so
Mm-hmm.
people are gravitating back towards that because I think they've seen that what's coming out of the left is just, I mean, to say
It's so
demonic
bad,
sounds
dude.
like it seems hyperbolic, but like it's satanic.
And they're not even hiding it anymore. Like
No.
uh, a lot of these musicians are just like overtly like Lil Nas X. He's kind of fallen off recently, but he's like
Yeah.
doing some crazy Jesus and devil stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like,
Right.
even if you don't believe in that, like have just a little bit of reverence for it, because
Right.
a majority of the United States claims to be Christian.
Right.
So, but I mean, I'm right there with you. I love that the arts are in film and entertainment is going more towards entertainment instead of a political message. Like
Yeah.
one of the best movies of the last probably 5 years was Top Gun, and
Yes.
it was about Top Gun. It was about
Yeah.
dudes being dudes and flying fast jets
Yeah.
and doing missions, and it was like patriotic and American, but it wasn't political
Yeah.
at all. And it was just a good all around all American movie, and it
Yeah.
was fantastic.
And I was nervous for it. I was really nervous because I'm
Me
like, okay,
too.
well, what are they gonna do? And then like watching it, it's like, holy shit, this is Top Gun.
It was so good.
And you don't see that with a lot of remakes. Like,
Mhm.
for example, to pivot back to like what I was saying with horror, um, the newest Wrong Turn movie was good. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but there was this kind of message where they shifted away from like, okay, it's these inbred cannibals in the mountains that are just eating people, but they shifted it to it was like this fringe, almost cult like sect of people
Mhm.
that were, living up in the mountains, and they were 100% self sustainable. And, but they were murderers. Like people that
Mhm.
came onto their territory were either killed or they were brought in. And if they violated it, like they took an iron spear and gouged their eyes out and sent them into the dark. Like
Mhm.
it was very much like all the main characters were super liberal, and there was still kind of like a political backbone to it.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, you just took an entire franchise that for the longest time people were obsessed with because it was just over the top, it was Looney Tunes, and you kind of put a political message behind it. It was done tastefully enough that it was still an enjoyable film, but when you're in tune with the political sphere, you can see the underlying messaging. And it was like this way of trying to take a lot of the conservatives that are shifting towards this idea of being able to live kind of off the grid and being able to be self-sustainable, and painting them in this light of like, okay, these people are just sickos. So there was that underlying message there to it.
Mhm.
And like I said, it was well done, but anybody that's at least somewhat in tune with the real world can see that there was still a partisan bias to the film. And
What do you
so,
think about like AI and Chat GPT and some of these other like large language models coming into like writing scripts and songs and all this kind of stuff. I think that
I think it's dangerous.
you think so.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, we saw it with Google Gemini, where AI is a fantastic tool if you use it right. But at the end of the day, there's still somebody on the back end that's programming that. And there's still a very large portion of Silicon Valley in the tech sector that is pretty liberal. And so these large language models are trained in a specific way to fit a bias. I mean, look at Google Gemini. They were putting out black Nazis. Like it didn't make any sense. And that's, I think, if there's ever going to be a tool that actually produces decent decent answers based on like a non political bias, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
Grok. And the reason I say that is because it's trained on the data of X users. And if you look at they did a study a while back where they wanted to test the political bias of X, because for the longest time everybody was convinced that X had turned into this like right-wing platform. It was the new Parler. And what they found was that it was not overwhelmingly conservative. It was almost 50-50. And so if your language model is being trained on that, and it's being trained on the opinions of real people throughout the globe, you're going to get a more non-biased whether it's opinion or non-biased style, compared to like a Chat GPT or Google Gemini, or Claude is one of the worst offenders. um, I think it can be dangerous depending on how the model's trained.
I can see that. My hot take about AI is that it's not going to take over. I think that there's going to
No.
be, we're not there yet, but I think in a couple of years, what AI is going to do is it's going to honestly split society into two. There's going to be one half that's going to be obsessed with AI, and that's all they're going to do. And they're going to try to build businesses and arts and all this kind of stuff. The other half, and I think this is going to be a bigger half, is we're going to use AI sparingly, but it's going to force people to be together because they
Yeah.
want real. They crave real. There's something like I think that AI it's fantastic for like sales and outreach and stuff like that because you can. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking at some like AI agents that I'll probably implement that are just like
Yeah.
fantastic. But people are going to want to like be sold to by a real person, and it's gonna force people to actually like go into real life. And I
Yeah.
think instead of Zoom calls, we're gonna have lunches. And I think instead of AI agents reaching out, it's gonna be much better to have a phone call. I think people
Yeah.
are going to it's going to force people to get out into the real world and stop being on
Yeah.
their couch.
Well, I think we're already starting to see a little bit of that. So, being a business owner, I do a lot of sales outreach, especially
Mm-hmm.
myself. And so I use a tool on like the cold email side called Apollo that has
Mm-hmm.
a really, really big AI focus. And so what I've seen is that when I'm reaching out to people directly, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
just pulling the information from Apollo and I'm actually typing out an email, I'm getting a higher response rate doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like doing research on the company, reaching out and personalizing the email, not having some, the AI program on the back end give me like the bird's eye view. I'm having better results with that. Same thing with LinkedIn. Like I use LinkedIn pretty much specifically as a sales tool.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm sending out actual messages to people,
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting uh, way better results in terms of response rates and things like that. And I'm more likely to book a call with somebody. When I first started doing it, my whole goal was to network. And
Mm-hmm.
so I set up this thing called virtual coffee, where it was like a little 15-minute introduction of, hey, who are you? What do you do? How can we help each other? And no shit, I was getting a 70% response rate. And I was booking like 15, 20 calls a week that were just specifically little 15-minute intros, just meeting people. And I've since been connected to some massive, massive companies. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
one out of New Jersey called Go Fetch Fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat and had an hour long call with their owner yesterday because I got connected to him through somebody I did a 15-minute intro with. Like
That's awesome.
we're starting to see that more human connection that's already being craved. Because if you look at the comment section, like especially on things like LinkedIn, it's all AI generated responses, and you can tell. And nobody cares. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
wants to see it. So like I think there's a place for it, especially in like the journalism world, for example. You're gonna see a lot of journalists that maybe aren't the best writers, but are fantastic at sourcing material,
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to produce. And then they'll go back and they'll tweak it. Like Dinesh D'Souza is using AI for all of his podcast descriptions right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you can clearly tell. So he's great on the podcasting side, maybe not so great on the writing side. So there's a place for it. Like for people that, like you said, for whether it's like sales outreach or it's research, it's like R&D, being able to find information quickly to back a case study, like that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's going to be this massive takeover altogether. Like you might see a little bit of a shift in manufacturing and production, because as we move into the age of like robotics, for example, there's definitely going to be a shift there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to open up
I hope so.
opportunities in other sectors.
I think robotics is going to be one of the ways that we reduce costs across the board.
Yeah.
It was so before the election, there was that whole longshoreman conversation that was happening because they wanted to go on strike, and um, they really like a lot of people took a good look at what they were doing, and they really do have the United States in like a chokehold in a lot of ways, because
They're hindering progress.
they are hindering progress. They have been making tremendous amounts of money. Like some of the guys who've been there for 10 plus years are making like 200,000 plus bonuses and benefits and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, they're making way more than like the average, tech consultant right now.
Right.
Um,
Well, and
and
it's
they're
interesting.
refusing to like the union is refusing technology. And then you see
Yeah.
videos of China and their whole ports are being run by AI, or a large majority of
Yeah.
it. And it's super efficient, and it cuts out any like injury or liability or whatever because there's way less people.
Yeah.
And like I think if we move towards that, there's no reason why we are behind from China to do that kind of stuff. And
Right.
with every industrial revolution, there's always job opportunities for people. There's new job opportunities. So people are like, oh, we're going to lose trucking. We're going to lose, some of these like, some blue collar jobs, not all, but some blue collar jobs. And it's going to force people to figure stuff out and innovate. And sure, there's always going to be a shakeup, but like,
Yeah.
we can't really stop it. We're in an industrial revolution right now.
Yeah.
And we were in one with the advent of the internet and the dot-com bubble and Amazon and Web 2 and now Web 3 and AI. And it's the same kind of thing with like going from, a small business in a small town to industrialization and manufacturing and, Henry Ford and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. but
Prime
there's
example for that, manufacturing CNC machines. Like, look at what people were doing beforehand. You brought in a CNC machine that you can program that'll actually do the job for you, and production output went way up, and very few jobs were lost.
Mhm,
Like, they just shifted them elsewhere. And I think
mhm,
that's where, like, I think X was looking 10 years into the future with this idea of being able to monetize your social media, because at the end of the day, that's still your IP, that's your intellectual property.
mhm,
And we're going to start to see, as some of these manufacturing jobs go away, they're going to be pushed towards the digital side of things.
mhm,
And so I think they were kind of looking 10 years ahead into the future.
mhm,
But like you said, we're behind, especially on like the port side and some of the manufacturing side, because of these unions. And they're forgetting that like every job has an economic value. That was the entire basis for the pay scale during, the manufacturing side of things. And as we started to boom and move into other sectors, as we grew, the economic value of those jobs changed. And it's the same concept now, except we're going to see a little bit of a downward trend because AI and automation can do things way cheaper. So why would I pay a guy $200,000 a year and have 50 or 60 of those guys on staff doing that, when I can have it all automated and spend a fraction of the cost every year? So like,
I
people
mean,
have to come to terms with that.
the upfront cost is going to be tremendous because
Yeah.
robotics isn't cheap. But then
Right.
you don't have to pay salaries. You just have to maintenance, no healthcare, no nothing. Like it will reduce the cost of goods so much,
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to suck for those guys for a second.
Yeah.
But we're like humans are resilient, especially Americans. We
Yeah.
we figure stuff out. There's no
Yeah.
reason why we couldn't figure stuff out.
No, 100%. There's no reason China should be as far ahead of us as they are.
Well, and
Like,
here's another industry that is getting decimated because of lack of labor is blue collar.
yeah.
Blue
Yeah.
collar work is like insane. I'm in the process right now of looking at some HVAC companies to buy because
Yeah.
I'm seeing the opportunity there.
Yeah.
Um, there's, I mean, some of these some of these HVAC installers are making like 50 to 75 bucks an hour. And
Yeah.
it's insane. And it's because because no one wants to go do it. And
No.
it's way more important than selling tech. It's way more
Yeah.
important than building tech for a
Yeah.
majority of people. There's some people who are specialized and they can do some crazy stuff. But
Right.
um, like if you're gonna sell another if you're gonna build another like tech widget versus go
Yeah.
install like an HVAC system, like everyone
Yeah.
needs heating and cooling, everyone needs plumbing, everyone needs electrical, everyone needs, you know, like the I love the blue collar
Yeah.
industry for the next probably 50 years
Yeah.
because it's gonna get if stuff doesn't change, it's gonna get so expensive. And these guys who are and there are some people who are seeing it right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are not going to college and going to trade school or going and
Yep.
being an apprentice at whatever blue collar company so they can learn how to do it. And then if you can build a company around it or buy a company or take over a company, whatever, you can.
Yeah.
You, okay, so here's a perfect example of like the cognitive dissonance of some of these careers. So back in Seattle, I was a server bartender for like a year, and I made a ton of money on tips, like
Yep.
so much money. And I calculated it
Yep.
out, and I think I was making like 70, 80,000 a year on tips. And because like the salaries are so low, like it doesn't even matter.
Right.
And someone told me, and I looked it up, and I was like, I was making more than the average lawyer in Seattle. The average lawyer in Seattle makes like 50, 60,000. I was making
Right.
75, 80,000. I was just serving food. And I was like,
Yeah.
there's this cognitive dissonance between some of these like white collar jobs or these good jobs, these secure
Mm-hmm.
jobs. And it's like, why are we listening to our parents who grew up in a totally different economic time period?
Right.
Like it just doesn't make sense. Like I think we're supposed to honor our parents for sure, but I, here's what's really funny. I saw this video on TikTok probably a year ago or something like that, and it was this dad. And he was trying to show his kids like how affordable it is to buy a house, and so he was showing them in like his old mortgage papers, and it was like from like I don't know, like 1990s or something like that. And he's like, the interest rate right now is at, 6, 7%. And my first house was at, 8, 9%. And it's like, yeah, but the house was like $110,000.
Right. And that's now a
And
$350,000 house.
you made $45,000 that year, which isn't a lot of money, but it's like,
Not in today's world.
yeah, no, well, yeah, I guess it was back then, but it was like it was such a weird thing because everything is inflated. Like the cost of stuff is so expensive, and there's even a deeper conversation about like housing and why it's so expensive. And and a huge part of it, it's not necessarily BlackRock or the illegals. It's uh, more of the permitting process and all the red tape that actually goes into building new houses because the housing market's supply and demand, right? That's all markets, right? And so if no one's building because no one can or they can't build fast enough, then the cost of there's so much demand going into a very little amount of supply, and no one's selling, and we're kind of in this like unique period where a lot of people have these like 3% uh, like 3% mortgage rates, and their house is inflated, and they can't actually afford to buy their house today because of the interest rate has doubled and their house is increasing value and all this kind of stuff. So they're not selling,
Right.
and so that decreases supply. But there's all this demand to go buy a house, but there's no inventory.
Yeah.
I talk to my real estate friends about this all the time, but
It's basic economics.
it's really basic economics, and cities aren't helping us out at all. Um,
No.
I think Trump's going to do something about that. To be honest, I saw something today actually that he's opening up, and this isn't necessarily about land, but he's opening up a whole bunch of the Pacific Ocean so that commercial fishermen can actually go fish there, which is fantastic.
Huge.
But if you apply that same model to like land in the U.S., I bet you he's going to free up a lot of federal land to actually go build.
Yeah.
There's no reason like why there's this conversation about overpopulation. Cities are overpopulated, but if you've ever been on an airplane and looked out, hundreds of millions of acres worth of land out there
Yeah.
that isn't being built on. Like you're
Yeah.
dumb for thinking that we're overpopulated.
Well,
That's the
and they're not
stupidest
doing
idea of all
anything
time.
with it.
Right, they're
Yeah.
not doing anything with it. Now, I do really like national parks. I think that like I've been to Yellowstone, I've been to Yosemite, I've been to a ton of the national like Rainier National Park, and so I love getting out in nature and seeing that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of land out there, and
Yeah.
we got to be able to do it. We
Yeah.
got to be
Whether
able to
it's
do it.
residential or it's commercial, I mean, either way, it benefits us. It'll either lower the cost of
Yep.
housing or
Mm-hmm.
it'll increase productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we've got to be able to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's all government red tape that holds it back.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got we've got a lot of work to do over the next. I'm hoping 8 years because JD Vance, if he's at the forefront, it's going to be really tough to compete for
It's
anybody
gonna be
on the
really
left.
it's gonna be really tough. There's this crazy thing that people are saying Trump could run a third time, and like more than half of Republicans are going for that. I don't think he should run again. It'd be
No,
cool. I
he'll
don't
be
think he
too
should,
old.
but so many people love Trump still that I think he could even be a kingmaker for the next election, right?
Yeah,
So obviously he's
whoever
going
he
to
endorses.
endorse. I think it's going to be JD. Um, he's so good, and I don't see him slowing down. He keeps getting better and better. I don't know if you saw the the tweet about the trophy. with the
Yes.
so JD Vance like messed up on the trophy, and it was two pieces, and he picked it up weird, and it fell over, and so everyone was like, "Oh, he broke the trophy." And so JD Vance
He played
literally
into it.
he played into it. He's like, "I love Ohio State so much, I broke the trophy so no one else can win it," or something like that. It was like a brilliant tweet. It was.
Yeah.
I was like, "This guy's awesome.
Yeah.
He's
And
so
it's
good."
he's in touch. And I think that's part of that larger craving. And I think we're seeing it across the board where people want a younger generation in
Mm-hmm.
control of the country. And you've got a guy like JD Vance who's what in his 40s he'll be
Mm-hmm.
or will be.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this little bit of a younger generation that's ready to come up and kind of take over. And so if Trump is, it ends up being the kingmaker, like you said, for the next election, we have a real opportunity to have somebody that's young, that actually understands how the world works, that
Mm-hmm.
takes the reins and moves in. Like I think it's as long as we keep our messaging solid and we keep the ground game going,
Mm-hmm.
not like we saw in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin during the special elections where people didn't turn out. I think
Well,
we've
that's
got a real opportunity.
yeah. I I think that's one of the biggest things we can fix is people tune in for national elections on our side on the right, um, but not for the special elections. And
Right.
it's really frustrating. I think I did enough on the social side to be able to go promote it and tell people to turn out. And there was a pretty good ground game, but it wasn't anything spectacular. And I think that's why we lost.
No. Yeah.
We did keep those two seats in Florida, which was great. But the special elections and that kind of stuff, like we gotta figure out how to work on that. And the problem is from the media side, it doesn't get as many clicks. No
Yeah.
one cares,
Yeah.
um, and no one even knows to care. Like people know to care about what Trump's doing or what some of these governors are doing, but for a local supreme or a statewide Supreme Court race, like that's really important. It's super important to Wisconsin.
Yeah. But it's also a targeting thing too. I mean, you look at like social media, for example, and it's very wide reaching. It's far reaching. And
Mm-hmm.
so when it comes down to like the special elections, you have to really be able to target in on that base in Wisconsin or that base in Pennsylvania and actually hone in on it. And
Mm-hmm.
so unless you have a local influencer that's doing a very good job of it, which the social media game I don't think is good for that. You're not going to be able to replace the actual on the ground game, going and knocking doors and trying to get people motivated. You're not going to do that through social media on a local level. At least I
Yeah,
don't think so.
you can. I mean, social media is so good at targeting and just organic reach. So if you talk about Wisconsin, it's going to push it towards people who live in Wisconsin.
Right.
Um, but you're kind of right. You're mostly right on that.
Well,
Um,
and it's
and
where
there's
hashtags I think used to be powerful, and it's not so much the case
hashtags
anymore.
aren't the thing anymore. I'm actually in the process of building an app that is going to solve for that. So um, we'll be able to like once people sign up for it, we'll be able to push out notifications about special elections and things like that. And like the goal with the app is to be able to connect people to their politicians. So like it'll have like a profile of your congressman or your senator or whatever. And so like and this is the first iteration of the app. So whenever bills are on the floor or are about to be on the floor, you can just hit the email. It'll go into your email, and then you can write an email to them about XYZ thing, XYZ bill that's they're going to vote on or not vote on it. Um, and so the goal would be to get organized from that perspective and
Yeah.
see if we can't build it big enough where we get, a bunch of people from all the states, and then figure out how to like incentivize them to get involved. So I'll need to
Yeah.
figure out some partners for that. But ultimately the goal with the app is to make the whole process like really, really simple. I
Yeah.
see a whole bunch of, and I even did this for one of the bills that we wanted to have passed. I think it might have been the Save Act, but um, I found a list of senators and their emails and their phone numbers to their office. And so I published it and it got retweeted. I think I got like 500,000 views on it. And it was awesome because, it got all that
Yeah.
information out there. But if it was all
Right.
in an app and you could sign up for it. So like if you're in Pennsylvania, you put in your zip code and it matches you to the person who's in your district and your senator. And then one click, you can call or email their
Yeah.
office. Like it turns activism into like a really, really simple, easy thing. And then
Right.
we'll be able to connect like the local GOP chapters and get people in there and,
Yeah.
connect a lot of these groups that are trying to like, who's in Pennsylvania? What groups are in Pennsylvania?
Right.
What do we need to do for here? We're looking for volunteers for this. We're paying people to do this, whatever. So that's kind of like the goal of the app. Probably won't have a lot of applications outside of like midterms in general, but
Mhm.
the goal is to like help people connect with their politicians.
Yeah, it's a great idea because everybody wants that simple, easy, way to get involved and do it. Like you can post all day about calling your congressman. How many people are actually going to like copy and paste that phone number and take the time to call? And like, no, they want that simple one click, and that's where like Turning Point and Early Vote Action did such a fantastic job, is because they would pre-populate messages to send out to voters. And
Mm-hmm.
so no, you didn't have to put any thought process into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like with your idea, for example, being able to just use geolocation. So if people want to sign up and be able to use like the email features and this and that or whatever, great. But using like a geolocation where if somebody clicks the link, takes you to a web page, it asks for location permission and automatically connects you, like that right there is one step out of the way to
Mm-hmm.
where people can still at least see the bills that are on the floor and get in touch with people without even
Mm-hmm.
having to like sign up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're onto something there, because it's something
I
that we don't really see.
I think it could be really good.
Yeah, I
So
think it's hugely beneficial.
we'll see if I can vibe code my way into it. But
Yeah, it's the app market is so tough because everybody's developing an app now, and it's super easy with like companies like Bubble that allow you to build no code apps,
hmm
things like that. It can be a tough market to break into, but I guarantee you, on like, for example, Public Square was going to do a business summit where you could actually pitch it to people. They had like this whole Shark Tank style thing set up, and then of course that event got canceled because of the hurricanes in Florida. But
hmm
there's tons of conservative VC firms out there that would probably latch onto that idea very
hmm
easily. Very easily. And if there's a way to build like like social media, so they see their congressman, here's your they click the congressman, here's your last 5 X posts
hmm
from that person.
hmm
There's a way to build interconnectivity there that keeps people consuming the media they already consume and consuming
hmm
information the way they already consume it with a broader purpose. So
hmm
like I definitely think you're onto something. But
I hope so. I think it could be great.
yeah,
I think it could be really
absolutely.
good.
But
So
but hey man, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. This is good. It'll be, once it's chopped up and edited, it'll be coming out here in like 2 weeks. So
perfect. I
I will I'll send you
thanks
clips
for
and
having me
stuff
on.
as I
It's gonna
clip
be
it
great.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely,
And
man.
tag me, collab with me on Instagram.
Yeah.
We'll get it out. But yeah,
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can follow you again.
So on Instagram, it's at Gentry Gevers. On X, it's at Gentry W Gevers because my old account got banned. But yeah, those are the best places to see me
Right.
or the content I post.
Right on, man. Well, thank you.
Thanks, man. This is great. This is really fun.
100%. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one.